The next speaker is John McAnally, Vice President of the PCS, the union that is the backbone of this struggle to defend public sector pensions.
Thank you very much, Rob, and thanks very much for George. He's right that they will be emboldened if these attacks are allowed to go through unchallenged. Because you know, and the people in this building know, the scale of the attacks that's been unleashed on our workplaces and communities. An unprecedented attack where a major transfer of wealth and power from the 99% in society to the 1% of parasites and bankers and big business.
Well, I'm here today because we have the best opportunity we're ever going to get to stop this government in its tracks. Not only to stop their attacks as far as pensions are concerned, but also to deliver a major blow against their cuts programme.
And pensions, of course, is part of that attack. They want us to work longer, they want us to pay more, and they want us to get less. And that was why we took action. And that is why settlement on such terms is totally unacceptable. The imposition of a tax on public sector workers. And I think what the problem is today is that that action on November the 30th not only gave hope to the trade unionists who took part in the strike action, but gave hope to the vast amount of people in this country who are searching for some kind of alternative to the cuts and some kind of alternative as far as leadership is concerned. But what it did, it gave people confidence.
November the 30th was one of the greatest days in British trade union movement history, and that is why what we need to do is build on that, name the day for action in January for a nationally coordinated strike, escalate the campaign, make sure we're bringing on private sector unions as well who are also fighting for pensions rights.
So what should be happening today? Rather than the circus and the sellout that we fear is going to happen in there, what they should be doing is naming the day for the next industrial action, the next day of nationally coordinated industrial action. We should be reaching out to those other public sector unions who are not already involved, getting them on board. And the magnificent strike in Unilever tells us a lie that public and private sector workers are divided. It's precisely that, a nonsense. We should be getting the private sector unions, the private sector workers involved.
Now, some of you may have seen, and I was a little worried myself, to wake up and have a few phone calls from people saying that the BBC were claiming that the NUT were close to a deal. And I'm glad to say it's just not true, and that the BBC have withdrawn that statement from the website. And indeed, I understand from messages that I've had at the moment that indeed, of course, the talks are going absolutely nowhere.
But today, sadly, we're going to see the so-called leaders of the TUC and of certain union leaders arguing for capitulation. They're going to argue we should be signing a heads of agreement. And let's have absolute clarity on what that means. It means on the question of paying more and getting less and working longer. All that will remain in place just as the government intended. There are no concessions. And when they argue that there will be concessions for local government workers, what they really mean is the attack will only be delayed for a year or two. That is not a concession, that is surrender. So why? Why are these people doing this? It's because they don't have any confidence in their members, they don't have any confidence in their class.
And of course, some of us, unfortunately, are being told that it's those of us in the trade union leaderships that are fighting, that it's those of us here from the National Shop Stewards Network, from the NUT, from the UCU and all the other unions that are fighting, that it's we who are putting out the lies. And we've got to make it absolutely clear. We know the truth, and we know it only too well. That the government have refused to lift the cost ceiling. The financial cost within which we are allowed to negotiate has not been changed at all. So I'm not surprised those talks are going nowhere. Because the only offer they are giving to us is basically to decide exactly which way we want to cut our throats. Because there is no more money. It is therefore still a case of us paying more to retire older and to get less with career averages and the CPI.
They've been arguing for a long time that the problem with the cuts is that they're too deep and too fast, reflecting the rubbish coming from Miliband and the Labour Party. The reality is this: it's not because the cuts are too deep and too fast, it's because there are any cuts at all, and that's why we oppose those cuts, because there is an alternative. Maud, Francis Maud, 4 homes, the man who fiddled the expenses, and the head of a government, well, I say a government, it might be better to describe it as a criminal conspiracy against the vast majority of people in this country. He said some time ago that there is no stomach in the trade union movement for a fight. Well, that was a lie. There is a stomach for the fight with the vast majority of members, the vast majority of activists. The people that don't have a stomach for the fight are those small coterie of leaders, or so-called leaders, who are prepared today to sell out our members and inflict a self-inflicted defeat on our movement. And that's why we've got to organise against them.
We cannot afford a capitulation at this stage. It will mean that the Tories think they'll be able to get away with anything. So that is why we need some genuine leadership. And if the TUC is not prepared to show that leadership, we have to go into the branches, into the workplaces and build that leadership ourselves.
PCS, Left Unity, will be organising a conference on the 7th of January, 11 to 4 o'clock at the Friends Meeting House in London. We've organised it straight away because we believed that we could not hesitate, such was the scale of the attack. But let's be clear, that is an invite to every member, every activist and every union, so that we can have a democratic debate. Everyone's voice will be heard, so we can build a strategy, because we're not giving up today. If these people want to sell out, our message must be that we will organise against them. We will organise against these sellouts. We will organise in our branches. We will organise in our workplaces. We will organise on the various union executives, because at the end of the day, we cannot allow them to get away with this without some kind of comeback.
Do we cave in and see not only our pensions robbed, but to give confidence to the government to carry on with all the other attacks that they have planned for us? Hundreds of thousands of job cuts, removal of TUC, removal of facility time, attacks on workload, attacks on capabilities, all of those attacks they have lined up. And if these trade union leaders, or those that want to call themselves a leadership, but if they refuse to lead, then they will be guilty of giving the government a dose of confidence, just when, of course, they are a government that is split down the middle.
Because the scale of the defeat that was being inflicted upon us would do damage for many years to come if we let them get away with it. So we repeat again, instead of craving submission to this government in crisis, let's name the day for more national coordinated action. Let's build the campaign, let's escalate it, let's get more unions involved. So let's be clear in what our alternative is. That's the real alternative to the craven submission that we see going on today. So let's stick together, an alternative to the cuts, but also we must argue, as most of you have done throughout your lives, for an alternative to this kind of scandalous, weak leadership, because they represent the past. They have no confidence in people, their members, the working class generally. They have no confidence in the future. They think there's nothing but bowing down to the bankers, bowing down to the big business people, and bowing down to the crooks in Westminster. We say no. Let's organise against them. Let's stick together. Let's build a movement, and let's build leaderships and a leadership in our movement that deserves to represent working people, not one that's at the beck and call of the bankers and the Tories. Thank you.